Chapter 301. The Invitation. Soon, the drill bit cut out a round copper piece slightly larger than a coin from the metal plate. It clamped the piece tightly and passed it to the grinding machine next to it. The grinding machine began to smooth the copper piece. After a while, the disc, now polished on both sides, was manipulated by magic to approach the micro-carving knife. The micro-carving knife started to engrave runes along a preset template. This process took quite some time because the miniature carving knife not only needed to draw magic lines on the material, but also had to import magic power at a stable and uniform rate. However, Anduin soon discovered a problem. The lathe produced slight vibrations during operation, causing the microcutter connected to it to vibrate as well. This instability resulted in gaps in the inscribed runes. After a long wait, the miniature engraving knife finally finished its work. The round copper sheet was then guided to the grinding machine for final polishing. The end product was a bright metal round with engraved runes, slightly larger and thicker than a normal coin. Anduin took the finished product and examined it closely. The spell lines on the protective amulet were much thicker than expected, and the lines appeared uneven in thickness. I don't know if it can still be used, but I can feel the magic power fluctuations from the finished product, Anduin mused. Deciding to give it a try, he brought the amulet to the test range and fixed it on a humanoid target not far away. Stupefy! He cast a stunning spell at the amulet. As the spell approached, the metal disc immediately propped up a circular shield and collided firmly with the spell. The shield then broke. The stress rune is in effect. The power of the shield charm has been affected and greatly weakened, hasn't it? Anduin observed. I wonder if the vibration of the lathe can be solved with the ripple-repelling curse. If not, the micro-engraving knife must be separated from the main body of the lathe. Otherwise, the engraving accuracy will never improve. The processing efficiency of the lathe is also a problem. It took 10 minutes to process a single defensive talisman. At this speed, only 3 talismans can be produced in an hour, or 72 in a day. This is not particularly fast. The runes on the defensive amulet are relatively simple. If it were other products, it would definitely be slower. It takes the longest time to engrave runes during processing. It seems that to improve efficiency, a miniature carving knife must be installed. But to make a miniature carving knife, I need to use fairy ulam steel. I have many uses for this precious material, so let's make one more first and increase the production efficiency to a certain level. In short, ensuring that the lathe can be used normally after it is connected to the circuit is today's big achievement. The problems in the processing process are minor troubles that can be adjusted slowly. Anduin summarized the experiment with the magic lathe, feeling a bit greedy. Now, the magic power transformed by electrifying the wild thunder magic text could drive the magic lathe, and the alchemy props produced could be used, confirming what he had always imagined. As long as the lathe was adjusted to produce stably, his alchemy workshop could be formally established. In the following days, Anduin concentrated his energy on improving the magic lathe. He engraved the ripple-repelling spell on the lathe and installed a pair of automatic miniature carving knives. After several intensive tests, the magic lathe was finally able to process alchemy props efficiently. The quality of the finished product, while not up to the level of his own craftsmanship, was still satisfactory for normal use. For instance, a defensive talisman could withstand a stun spell with a strength of up to 80 points. Considering that the standard strength of a stun spell cast by a wizard is only 40 points, this mass-produced talisman could effectively block 2 stun spells on average. Just as Anduin finished debugging the magic lathe, Moody and Arthur, whom he had invited, arrived. Haha, Anduin, your place is really nice. It's a bit embarrassing that you only remembered to invite me after moving in so long ago, Moody said, his tone carefree. Leaning on his crutches, he fumbled around Anduin's house, teasing him as he did so. It's my fault. I've been so busy since I moved in. You and Arthur are the first guests I've had over. By the way, what would you like to drink? I have a few unopened bottles of red currant rum, Anduin said, heading to the wine cabinet. Of course, they were left by the previous owner. I don't usually drink. Hey, you don't need to explain. I don't care if you drink or not. Besides, you're over 16 now, which is considered an adult in the wizarding world, Moody said cheerfully. He leaned over to the tea table, sniffed the wine glass Anduin handed him, and then glanced to the side. Arthur, come and sit. There's good wine here. But why did you bring a child to Anduin's house? Anduin is Ginny's godfather. We haven't seen each other for a year, so I brought her along, Arthur replied casually. He then turned to his daughter. Ginny, let go of the dog. Although Anduin had invited only Moody and Arthur, Arthur had brought Ginny along. Upon arriving, Ginny's attention was immediately drawn to Hog. The poor dog, who had been planning to rest and bask in the sun on the living room windowsill, was rudely awakened by Ginny. Recognizing her, Hog's heart sank. His worst nightmare over the past year had been dreaming of this girl. Ginny, remembering Hog from last year, grabbed the dog's tail tightly as soon as she saw him. Let go, Ginny. You're going to pull the dog's tail off, Arthur said helplessly, crouching next to her and trying to persuade her gently. No, I want the dog. The dog will play with me, Ginny pouted, her eyes fixed on Hog, refusing to let go despite Arthur's attempts to convince her. It's okay, Arthur. Let Hog play with Ginny for a while. Although Hog is big, he won't bite, Anduin said with a smile, looking at the dejected Hog. He then approached Ginny and spread his hands tentatively. Hi, Ginny. Remember me? To his surprise, as soon as Ginny saw Anduin, she immediately let go of Hog's tail and threw herself into Anduin's arms. End of this chapter. Chapter 302 shares. After little Ginny threw herself into Anduin's arms, she hugged his neck tightly and kept repeating, Remember, remember, which amused everyone. Anduin let Ginny sit on his arm, holding her close. His eyes were full of joy and affection as he looked at the little girl. It seems Ginny likes you more than I imagined. You're more useful than me. It seems having you as Ginny's godfather is really beneficial, Arthur said, moving closer to Ginny and squeezing her little hand. Call him Godfather, Ginny. Do you remember? Godfather, Ginny obediently called out. She felt a natural kindness from the handsome man in front of her, even if she didn't fully understand the concept of a godfather. Hearing Ginny's call, Anduin responded happily and then returned to the living room, still holding her. Ginny, very clingy, gradually became more courageous. She stared at Anduin and then playfully tugged at his hair. Anduin didn't get angry at Ginny's mischief. Instead, he cooperated by moving his head, letting her mess up his hair. Seeing the good relationship between the two, Arthur smiled happily and laughed. You see, Ginny likes you so much. Why don't you let her stay with you for a couple of days? I'll come to pick her up later. Live here? Anduin asked, shaking the little girl in his arms. Ginny, would you like to spend a few days in Diagon Alley with your godfather? Ginny nodded instinctively, not fully understanding but trusting Anduin. Hog, the cat nearby, shuddered in horror at the news. What? This little demon wants to live here? I strongly disagree. Hog silently protested by stretching out his paw, but Anduin flamboyantly ignored him. Okay, stop showing off your father-daughter relationship, Moody interjected, curling his lips. Let's get down to business. In your letter, you mentioned you have something important to discuss with us, didn't you? Indeed, Anduin nodded, carefully placing Ginny on the sofa. She sat there obediently, grabbing the lollipop Anduin handed her and gnawing on it. Anduin leaned forward slightly, then took out 2 documents and pushed them in front of Arthur and Moody. Take a look at this. Moody and Arthur exchanged confused glances before picking up the documents to examine them. Oh? Are you ready to open your alchemy props company? Moody asked, surprised. But what does the 5% share mentioned in this document mean? Arthur nodded slightly after reading the document. Silver Lightning Alchemy Company? Is this the name you've chosen? It's great that you're starting a company, but why are you transferring shares to us? The document Anduin handed them was a shareholding agreement for the alchemy company. Anduin had thought that since he wanted to do business with the Ministry of Magic in the future, he would need to develop some internal relationships. Minister Budnow was too upright, and he didn't trust the others enough. So, he thought of Moody and Arthur. Moody, as a heavyweight in the Department of Law Enforcement, had significant influence. Having him speak on Anduin's behalf in the Ministry of Magic would be beneficial. Offering a 5% stake to pull Moody and his network to his side was a strategic move. As for Arthur, although the misuse of Muggle artifacts office he worked in was a small department, Arthur's authority was not insignificant. Anduin planned to get involved in the field of civilian alchemy, which would inevitably require modifying some Muggle items. Arthur could become a valuable asset for his company in the future. After all, the Ministry of Magic is responsible for legislation, and having someone on the inside could be incredibly beneficial. Anduin had also prepared a contract for Hagrid, knowing he would need access to the Forbidden Forest for resources. Essentially, he was integrating resources and leveraging the hidden value of his connections. These individuals were not just business associates, they were friends, and Arthur was practically family. Anduin understood the importance of keeping wealth within his circle. However, it wasn't easy for Anduin to explain his intentions directly, so he had to find a more logical approach. "That's right," Anduin said with a smile, looking at the two men. "I've been planning to start my own alchemy company, but my company will primarily focus on tactical equipment, which won't be sold to ordinary wizards. Since both of you work at the Ministry of Magic, your colleagues will be my main customers. So, I want to invite you both to be consultants for the company. This way, I can learn about customer needs and get feedback from you. As for these shares, my funds are a bit tight right now, so consider them your salary for consulting." Anduin then turned his attention to Moody. "For example, you mentioned that many Aurors face challenges in their duties. This has given me a lot of inspiration for product development. So, I sincerely invite both of you to join Silver Lightning Alchemy Company." Arthur still seemed a bit confused. "But even if you want to hire a consultant, wouldn't it be enough to hire Moody? I usually conduct surprise inspections, but I rarely fight on the front lines." "Indeed," Anduin acknowledged, "if it were just about combat equipment for frontline duties, Moody would be enough. But I also want to explore the market for civilian alchemy products. As far as I know, you've done research in this area, especially regarding the modification of Muggle items." Anduin poured another glass for Arthur and smiled. Arthur nodded, realizing he had discussed these topics with Anduin before. Moody, on the other hand, seemed to grasp the bigger picture. His eyes rolled back and forth before he grinned at Anduin. "Ha ha, Anduin, you've gone through all this trouble to bribe us with these shares. You want us to help you secure more orders from within the Ministry of Magic," Moody said, seeing through Anduin's intentions. End of this chapter. Chapter 303. After hearing Moody's words, Arthur seemed to realize the complexity of the situation and looked at Anduin with some confusion. Facing their gazes, Anduin did not show any surprise or panic, but grinned slightly. "It's okay if you want to understand it that way, but if you say it's to win the order, then you're wronging me a bit. I am very confident in my products. I believe that once I show you the complete alchemy props in my possession, you'll understand their worth." After finishing speaking, Anduin glanced at Moody again. "I demonstrated them to you before. Do you still remember?" "I'm impressed," Moody nodded approvingly. He had always coveted the alchemy props in Anduin's hands and would ask every year if Anduin had opened a business. "Then do you think your colleagues in the Ministry of Magic will be interested in my products once they know about them? Will they be willing to spend money to buy them?" Anduin asked with a smile, after receiving a positive answer from Moody. "Well," Moody replied affirmatively after a moment of thought, "I don't think anyone will refuse. The alchemy items in your possession are quite attractive to the Aurors who are fighting on the front line." "So," Anduin spread his hands, "is it necessary for me to get orders through the back door? I just need to let my alchemy items have enough opportunities to be shown in front of your colleagues and customers, and orders will naturally come." "Oh," Moody tilted his head as if thinking of something. "Then what do you mean by enough exposure opportunities? Could it be that?" "Yes, Moody, you should have guessed it," Anduin chuckled. "I can provide you with enough tactical equipment for free and let you try it out and use it in front of your colleagues." "So that's it." Moody showed a look of sudden realization. "You want us to advertise in the Ministry of Magic for you." "There are considerations in this regard." Anduin nodded, then turned his head to look at Arthur. "Of course, what I told you before is also true about helping me develop new alchemy props. If necessary in the future, I will trouble you two to test new products for me." Hearing this, the two fully understood what Anduin meant. Moody even slapped his thigh. "Okay, as long as you don't want me to go against my principles and go through the back door for you, I can accept this job. Setting up a new company is a good thing for us." Arthur also expressed no objection. After all, Anduin was giving them money. It would be foolish not to take such a big advantage. "Okay," Anduin snapped his fingers, and then a quill and a box appeared in front of the two of them. "Since there is no problem, both of you can sign the magic contract, and we will be our own people in the future. These two boxes contain the first-generation product that I am going to sell now. Take them back and try them out first." The two saw that Anduin was well prepared, and based on their understanding of him, they knew he would not harm them. So, they simply signed their names on the contract. After signing, they couldn't wait to take the suitcase in front of them and open it. Inside were 2 rows of metal amulets, a pair of shoes, a vest, a glove, a pair of handcuffs, a pair of goggles, and a silver pocket watch. "It seems that you have developed new props during this period. Are these the enchanted handcuffs you told me about?" Moody asked as he picked up the handcuffs in the box and examined them. "That's right. There are instructions in the box on how to use these props. I also have a set of new equipment that is almost developed. It might be completed before the opening, and you can see the finished product then." Anduin pointed to the compartment in the suitcase, where the two of them saw a booklet inside. "Since we have signed the contract and are now colleagues, does your company need any help? I feel a bit embarrassed just taking things for nothing," Arthur said. Anduin was accustomed to being straightforward and not taking advantage of others, so he decided to be upfront. "I do have 2 things I need your help with. Even if you hadn't asked, I was going to bring them up," he said with a smile, nodding at Arthur. "What's the matter? You're our big sponsor now, so don't be shy," Moody responded immediately after signing the contract with Anduin, generously assuring him of his support. "It's actually not a troublesome matter," Anduin began, handing a licorice stick to Ginny, who was next to him, after finishing his lollipop. "To set up a company, you need to register with the Ministry of Magic. I'm not very familiar with the procedures, especially since many of my products are combat equipment. I'm unsure which of them will be classified as controlled items, so I need your help with this." "Well, I'm familiar with this process," Arthur replied. "Although the company registration procedures are a bit cumbersome, I can help you with the preliminary steps. You'll just need to go to the Ministry of Magic at the end. When the time comes, you can bring Ginny along and take her home afterward." As for the products, companies registered to sell physical goods must undergo a risk rating assessment, which will be jointly conducted by officials from the Department of Magical Accidents and Catastrophes and the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. When you go through the registration procedures, remember to bring all the products you want to sell. We will make an on-site ruling, and you can sell items that are not classified as controlled products to ordinary wizards. As an experienced member of the Ministry of Magic, Arthur was quite familiar with the operations of each division. "Okay, I'll trouble you then," Anduin nodded. "The other thing is, I would like to ask you to contact Director Burns of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement or Minister Budnow for me to see if I can give them a product launch presentation. Although I know both of them, I haven't had much contact with them. I want to demonstrate the products to them in person and discuss them in detail. If I can establish a direct supply relationship with the Ministry of Magic, I can offer them some discounts." Moody pondered for a moment after hearing Anduin's request. "I can talk to them for you. I think it shouldn't be a big problem. After all, you helped Minister Budnow a lot before, and you're also a student of Secretary Burns' brother." Anduin nodded in satisfaction. This was the benefit of having connections. If he were alone, or just another small business owner trying to establish a new company and discuss business directly with the director of the Ministry of Magic, it wouldn't be so easy. Now, not only did he have someone to help with the various cumbersome procedures at the Ministry of Magic, but also someone to facilitate communication with high-level officials. Presumably, Moody would speak highly of him when discussing him with Minister Budnow. End of this chapter. Chapter 304, The Company Establishment. After discussing the establishment of the company with Anduin for a while, Arthur and Moody bid him farewell. Now, all they had to do was wait for further news at home. Ginny, who stayed behind, showed no signs of nostalgia or reluctance when saying goodbye to Arthur, leaving him speechless as he had been ready to comfort her. Hogg, however, was even more taken aback. He could clearly feel Ginny's eyes, almost always focused on him when she parted with Arthur. That unsettling feeling was unmistakable. As Arthur and Moody left the house, Hogg quickly shrank in size and disappeared in a flash, hiding in some unknown corner. "Ginny, do you want some dessert? How about I make a cake for you?" Anduin asked, picking up little Ginny and coaxing her with a doting smile. "Okay." Ginny's eyes narrowed into two cute little crescents. Then, as if remembering something, she tilted her head. "Godfather, I want a dog to play with me. Where is the dog?" Hearing Ginny ask about Hogg, Anduin's smile grew even wider. "The dog is playing hide-and-seek with you. Go find him, okay? I'll make you some delicious food first, and you can come find me when you're tired." "Yeah." Ginny nodded eagerly at the mention of a game of hide-and-seek and began looking around as if searching for treasure. Once Anduin put her down, she rushed out, clearly more interested in finding the dog. "Chi-Chi, keep an eye on Ginny. Don't let her hurt herself. I'll take care of dinner today," Anduin instructed, squinting at the excited Ginny in the distance. He had found Hogg's nemesis. Ginny would have a few days to deal with this silly dog. "Yes, my lord," Chi-Chi responded before apparating and disappearing from sight. In the following days, Anduin, accompanied by Ginny, felt the warmth of family that he had long missed, which made him love his goddaughter even more. However, Hogg was having a tough time. This era had gained a lot of new experiences. It was the first time he had seen a human with more energy than him, and she was just a little girl. No matter how big or small he made himself, or which corner he hid in, Ginny always found him, calling out "dog" in a way that frightened him. Moreover, Ginny was quite strong. Once she set her sights on him, Hogg would be pulled out and then subjected to her playful roughhousing. Despite this, Ginny never seemed to tire of playing with him. Eventually, Hogg gave up. If she wanted to play, he would let her. He couldn't escape her anyway. One day, Anduin appeared in the center of the living room, fully dressed and holding a large suitcase. In front of him, Ginny was rubbing the small Hogg. "Ginny, it's time to leave. We're going to the Ministry of Magic today, and we're on a tight schedule," Anduin said, patting the little girl on the head to urge her. "No, Godfather, let me play with the dog for a while longer, okay?" Ginny pouted, clearly unhappy, and pinched Hogg's cheek even harder. Hogg twitched numbly a few times. "Hey!" Anduin sighed helplessly at the sight of the girl and the dog. He had originally wanted Ginny to treat Hogg well for him, but it seemed Hogg couldn't escape his fate. "Well, let's take Hogg with us and let him stay with you for the last day," Anduin suggested as a compromise, looking at the poor Ginny. "Really? Okay. I want to take the dog with me. Dog, grow bigger, bigger, bigger." Ginny excitedly threw Hogg to the ground, urging him repeatedly. At this point, Hogg, who was about to cry from frustration, glanced at Anduin with resentment. He hadn't expected such a humiliating experience today. Nonetheless, he obediently grew larger. Ginny, meanwhile, skillfully leaped onto Hogg's back and urged him forward, ready for their next adventure. "Go, dog, drive!" "Woof!" Hogg muttered in dissatisfaction, then helplessly carried Ginny out of the room. Anduin led the female knight to the Ministry of Magic. "Anduin, you're here," Arthur greeted, as he saw Anduin arrive at the Ministry of Magic. He then noticed his daughter riding a large dog. "Ginny, why are you bullying the puppy again? Come down quickly." Ginny pouted in dissatisfaction. "No, the Godfather said I could let the dog play with me today." She had been spoiled at Anduin's house these past few days and was now acting like a young lady with a temper. "It's okay, Arthur. Let her play if she wants. I have an appointment with her today," Anduin said, glancing at Ginny dotingly and pleading with Arthur on her behalf. "Well, don't spoil her too much, or you'll ruin her," Arthur said, shaking his head helplessly. "Girls need to be pampered. It's the wisdom of our predecessors," Anduin replied casually, then changed the subject. "By the way, in your letter, You only mentioned that I should bring the product over today. Are we going to go through the formalities of registering a company, or should we go through product classification first? No, didn't Moody make it clear when he sent you the letter? Arthur shook his head and looked at Anduin. Moody and I both mentioned your matter to Minister Budnor. I didn't expect His Excellency to be very interested in your product and decided to watch the product demonstration in person. So let's go directly to the practice hall of the Law Enforcement Department. The Minister will take the directors of the Law Enforcement Department and the Magic Accidents and Disasters Department, as well as all members of the strike team, to inspect your alchemy products and assess their risks. It will all be done on the spot. This is a good opportunity, Arthur said happily. If your products can satisfy them, it won't be hard to get a lot of orders. You should thank Moody. He's been praising your alchemy tools to the sky. Is the demonstration going to be held so soon? Anduin thought he would have to wait for a while. Minister Budnor seemed to be in a hurry. He digested the news he heard from Arthur and felt something was off. Has the Ministry of Magic encountered any troubles these days? Or is there someone causing problems for Minister Budnor? Anduin asked, puzzled. End of this chapter. Chapter 305, Vase, Seeking Monthly Ticket Recommendation. Oh, why do you have such an idea? Arthur raised his eyebrows in surprise. Isn't this obvious? Anduin smiled at him. It's only been a few days since I mentioned this to you. No matter how free Minister Budnor is, he wouldn't be able to give such timely feedback, right? I was prepared for a longer wait. Besides, Minister Budnor is taking this very seriously. I am quite self-aware. Since she is so anxious to see me, it must be because the equipment I provided can effectively help her. At least some of the equipment must be useful. Anduin, you are really sharp. Arthur couldn't help but admire him. After a moment of thought, he added, Indeed, the Ministry of Magic has encountered some troubles recently. I don't know the details very well, but it seems to be related to smugglers. Judging from the minister's attitude, the matter isn't too big, just a bit complicated. Anduin nodded thoughtfully. Hearing Arthur mention smugglers, he couldn't help but think of the werewolf wizard named Griffin and the Silver Spear organization. The company is named Silver Lightning, which is somewhat similar to Silver Spear. He shook his head to clear his thoughts. Now was not the time to dwell on these things. Anduin took Ginny and Hogg and followed Arthur to the Legal Enforcement Department on the second basement floor via the elevator. It wasn't the first time Anduin had been here, so he walked side by side with Arthur, familiar with the way. Arthur! A cold female voice called from the side. The two paused and turned to see a woman in professional attire approaching from the side aisle. The lady was tall and slender, with long blonde hair neatly coiled on her head. Her facial features were very delicate, and her eyes were as clear as green glass balls, exuding an intellectual beauty. With a professional smile, she walked towards them. It was the first time Anduin had seen such a beautiful woman, and she even reminded him of the rumored Vila. She seemed to be Arthur's colleague. It's Azalea. How come you have the time to come to the second floor? Arthur shook his head upon seeing her, then quickly recovered his expression and greeted her in a relaxed tone. Haven't we received an order from the director? He asked us to go to the rehearsal hall to see some display, Azalea replied with a smile. She then noticed Anduin next to Arthur. Who is this? He looks familiar. Ah, I forgot to introduce you. This is Anduin Wilson, a combat hero honored by Minister Budnor herself. He was a celebrity before, often featured in newspapers, Arthur said proudly, gesturing towards Anduin. No wonder, I remember seeing you. I didn't expect you to be that young combat hero, Azalea said, covering her lips with a slightly surprised expression. Arthur nodded with a smile and then looked at Anduin again. This is our colleague from the Ministry of Magic, Department of Management and Control of Magical Beasts, Azalea Roll, Chief Secretary of the Committee for Handling Dangerous Animals. She is a well-known beauty in our ministry. Then Arthur looked at Azalea with some puzzlement. Why did you notify the Department of Management and Control of Magical Beasts for today's display? I also received the order suddenly. Maybe they happened to see me in the ministry, so I was called up too. By the way, do you know what happened? What kind of display is it? Azalea tilted her head in confusion. Anduin would have thought she might scratch the back of her head if it weren't for her professional demeanor. Arthur couldn't help laughing at her question. You really asked the right person. Azalea glanced at Anduin in surprise. She remembered that this so-called battle hero was only in his teens and hadn't even graduated yet. However, she didn't ask too many questions. She nodded slightly to say goodbye to the two and then headed to the practice hall alone. What, aren't we going to enter the arena together? Anduin asked Arthur, puzzled. Since they were all going to the rehearsal hall, why not walk together? We need to register first. How can someone approach several senior officials with a box of unknown items? In case there is any curse hidden in it, we need to check it routinely first, Arthur explained with a smile. Anduin understood. They had to go through a security check. But why not just check in the entrance hall? He thought a little speechlessly. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration. Perhaps he could create an alchemy tool for security checks. By the way, I would like to ask, is that Azalea an ordinary human wizard? Anduin asked, putting his previous thoughts aside. You want to know if she is a Vila. She is indeed a human wizard. To be honest, such a beautiful woman is really easy to mislead. I heard that many people pursue her in the ministry, Arthur said with a chuckle, understanding Anduin's curiosity. Azalea joined the Ministry of Magic a few years ago. She is a year younger than Lily. After graduation, she traveled in Europe for 2 years before joining the ministry, so she is considered a newcomer, Arthur added. I heard you say her surname is Roll. Isn't that the same surname as a Death Eater who is on the run? Anduin asked, familiar with the list of Death Eaters. You mean Dolphin Row, right? He and Azalea are indeed from the same family, but their blood relationship is very weak. In fact, as long as they are pure-blooded in the Ministry of Magic, they are more or less related to Death Eaters. It's not surprising, Arthur explained. He then leaned closer to Anduin and whispered, Actually, Azalea didn't have particularly good grades in school. It is said that she was able to join the Ministry of Magic because of her looks, if you know what I mean. Anduin glanced at Arthur speechlessly. It seemed Mr. Arthur had been infected with Vivienne's gossip. So Azalea was actually a vase, but Anduin always felt that this beautiful woman was hiding something. There was an inexplicable sense of disobedience about her. Shaking his head, Anduin decided not to dwell on it further. He followed Arthur into an office. End of this chapter. Chapter 306, Demonstration. The so-called security check by the Ministry of Magic seemed as simple as child's play to Anduin. He watched an elderly wizard in front of him, holding a wand and casting spells like Detect Poison and Reveal Curse on the alchemy props in the box. The main issue was that the wizard's spellcasting level was quite average. He had to cast spells one by one and couldn't even cast them in a range. This really opened Anduin's eyes. Anduin dawdled there for more than 10 minutes before the other wizard, out of breath, finally put away his wand. It's all right, Perkins, Arthur said, handing over a handkerchief to the sweating wizard in front of him. It's okay, but why are you packing so many things? I'm really tired, the gray-haired Perkins complained, giving Anduin a slightly unkind look. Anduin could only roll his eyes in exasperation. He was contemplating whether to develop a special alchemy tool for security checks. After experiencing such inefficient service, he thought it was necessary. He decided to start making adjustments as soon as he got back, so that the old man would be out of a job as soon as possible. After finally completing the security check, the two went to Vanessa first and asked her to help take care of Ginny and Hogg for a while. It would be inconvenient to take them along for the demonstration later. Afterwards, they finally arrived at the rehearsal hall, albeit belatedly. The hall looked like a large banquet hall with bright lights and a very high ceiling. There were several dummies used for practice. At this time, many people were already standing in the rehearsal hall. In the middle of the hall stood Minister Budnow. On either side of him were the current director of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, Amelia Bones, and the director of the Department of Magical Accidents and Catastrophes, Cornelius Fudge. More than 10 aurors, led by Moody, were also present. Cornelius Fudge, whom Anduin had met once before, smiled and nodded at him with a kind expression. There were quite a few Ministry of Magic staff standing around, seemingly from different departments. Azalea, whom Anduin had just met, was standing next to a middle-aged man, likely an official from the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. "Sorry, Mr. Minister, we are late. The routine inspection took a lot of time," Arthur said as he led Anduin to Minister Budnor. "It's okay, we just arrived," Minister Budnor replied, still looking majestic. He then turned to Anduin. "Long time no see. I heard from Moody that your equipment is very important to our next operation. You always manage to surprise us. What exactly did Moody tell you?" Anduin felt a bit baffled by Minister Budnor's words. Moody, standing next to him, looked at him with a smile and winked at him, quite pleased with himself. "Sorry, I didn't know you valued it so much before. I can't guarantee whether I can fully satisfy you," Anduin said, feeling the need to leave himself an out in case things didn't go as planned. "I asked Moody to write you a letter, so don't make it too clear," Minister Budnor said, shaking his head indifferently. "Today's presentation requires a certain degree of confidentiality. Please don't let today's matter be known afterwards." No wonder the letter Anduin received was vague. It seemed that arrangements had been made long ago. He didn't know what kind of trouble the Ministry of Magic had encountered that required such secrecy. "I understand. I will keep my mouth shut. So, in order not to waste time, shall I start the product demonstration directly?" Anduin asked, looking at Budnor for confirmation. "Yes," Minister Budnor replied. Budnor pondered for a moment, then looked at the surrounding crowd. "Amelia, Connolly, Bianca, you should also take a good look at the equipment provided by Anduin to assess its value." The three individuals next to him nodded solemnly. Bianca, the official from the Department of Management and Control of Mythical Creatures, stood beside Azalea. The group of dozens of people turned their attention to Anduin. He glanced around, but noticed there was no table for displaying his equipment. Unfazed, he pulled a large table from his space ring, opened the suitcase in his hand, and neatly arranged the items inside. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to present to you the products of Silver Lightning Alchemy Company today," Anduin said calmly, spreading his hands over the display table. Seeing Anduin's composure in front of so many Ministry of Magic officials, the onlookers nodded in silent approval. "Our company's alchemy products are designed to provide convenience and protection for wizards on the front lines. I will now demonstrate the functions of these products one by one," Anduin continued. He took out a metal amulet and began his explanation. "This is a communication amulet, which facilitates information transmission. By inputting magic power into one amulet, the corresponding amulet will flash and vibrate. The current range covers the entire British mainland. The amulet has two working modes, one-to-many communication and many-to-many communication. In the one-to-many mode, one amulet is set as the main amulet, and the others as sub-amulets. This establishes a stable connection between the main and sub-amulets. For example, activating it once could mean safe, twice could mean enemy sighted, and 3 times could mean operation successful. There is also an emergency communication module. If an amulet is damaged or a large amount of magic power is input at once, it will send an emergency signal to the other amulets in the network. The signal manifests as flashing red lights, heat, and strong vibrations. The sensory amulet will point to the last known location of the emergency signal. As Anduin spoke, he demonstrated by inputting magic power into the main amulet. The amulets held by Minister Budnor and the other directors responded accordingly. Finally, Anduin injected a large amount of magic power into the main amulet, causing the others to heat up, shine, and vibrate intensely. End of this chapter. Chapter 307, Bargaining. Now I have sent an emergency signal. Everyone can sense my position with a little focus. Even if your magic power is exhausted or your perception ability is relatively poor, you can place the amulet on your forehead and it will point to everyone, Anduin explained in great detail. Following Anduin's instructions, several people tested the amulet and found it worked exactly as he described. Minister Budnau's eyes lit up after experiencing it himself, and the people around began discussing it enthusiastically. After Anduin's brief introduction, they realized the significance and value of this equipment in actual use, especially the strikers who often faced communication challenges. Although they could use the Patronus charm to transmit information, it was quite conspicuous, and most Aurors couldn't master the advanced application of this spell, usually relying on apparition to communicate. How long does this kind of talisman last, and how strong is its ability to interfere? Minister Budnow asked, clearly interested in the first item Anduin presented. No matter how you use it, a communication amulet can continue to work for 3 months. However, if an emergency signal is issued, the amulet will be scrapped immediately. You can get a new one from me by paying 1/3 of the cost of the expired amulet. Scrapped amulets need to be bought again, Anduin explained. As for the anti-interference ability, it can penetrate ordinary shielding spells. However, it won't work against powerful confusion spells and shielding spells. I can make an enhanced version with stronger penetration for the Ministry of Magic, but it will be more expensive. Minister Budnow nodded and signaled Anduin to continue. Next, we have the many-to-many function communication talisman. First, we select several talismans to build a communication network. All the talismans within this network can send messages to the rest, whether to everyone or to a specific individual, Anduin continued. To achieve this function, you need to bind an accessory called the communication manual, which acts as a transfer station. Each manual can support a network of up to 20 people. You just need to number all the amulets and remember who has which number to send designated summons. Of course, this manual is not free, but if the Ministry of Magic orders 20 communication amulets, I will include a manual at no extra cost, Anduin added with a calm and elegant expression. So, how much are you selling this messenger talisman for? Fudge asked, playing with the talisman in his hand. The unit price of a messenger talisman is 15 gold galleons. Anduin replied happily. 15 gold galleons? Fudge tilted his head and glanced at Minister Budnow hesitantly. He clearly felt the price was a bit high, considering the lifespan of the talisman is only 3 months, and it costs 5 galleons to replace. The actual annual cost would be 30 galleons. The cost is a bit high. Can it be cheaper? Minister Budnow liked the amulet but understood Fudge's concern. If the Ministry of Magic orders more than 50 pieces at one time, I can set the price at 13 gold galleons each. What do you think? Anduin offered, not willing to let go too easily. Minister Budnow was visibly tempted and was about to agree when Amelia Bones, director of the Department of Legal Enforcement, interjected. The number 13 is too unlucky. How about 12 galleons apiece? Anduin pretended to think deeply for a moment, but he was actually cursing Professor Burns, the director's sister. Everyone's concern was obviously genuine, and Minister Budnow was clearly moved. Yet you still had to step in. Fortunately, only you know the true cost of this broken talisman. Okay, 12 galleons it is, Anduin finally agreed, gritting his teeth and nodding as if he had lost a lot of money. After all, it's the first prop I'm showing you, so I'll treat it as a half-sell, half-gift. Seeing that he agreed, Minister Budnow was quite pleased. He was also very grateful to Anduin for seemingly giving up some something valuable. After all, this amulet appeared to be quite precious, made of Agrippa alloy. All right, let me introduce the communication amulet to everyone first. The next product to be demonstrated is the defense amulet, Anduin announced. He then showcased the defense, sonic boom, and flash talismans to the group. Everyone was impressed with their effects. Each new product introduction sparked a burst of discussion, especially the defensive amulet. Many of the Aurors were secretly planning to visit Anduin's store to purchase more of these valuable items. When it came time to negotiate prices, Amelia stepped forward, putting aside Minister Budnow, and negotiated with Anduin directly. In the end, the prices were settled. The defensive talisman at 10 galleons and the other 2 talismans at 12 galleons each, just like the communication talisman. After introducing the talisman products, Anduin moved on to the rest of his offerings. These are magic handcuffs. Once they are placed on a prisoner, they continuously extract the suspect's magic power, rendering them unable to cast spells. For an ordinary adult wizard, it only takes 1 minute to make the suspect completely compliant. I believe every Auror on the front line deserves one. This is a protective glove. Its effect is similar to that of a defensive talisman. Once activated, it generates a shield with the iron armor curse centered on the glove. It is extremely flexible and can adjust the defense angle at will. Additionally, the strength of the iron armor charm is 3 times that of the defensive talisman, though it is, of course, more expensive. This is a self-test pocket watch. The front functions as an ordinary pocket watch, telling the time. When you open the back and activate it, it can automatically scan the holder's body for blood loss, dehydration, poisoning, fractures, and check for curses or dark magic of lesser intensity. Seeing the popularity of the amulets, Anduin's confidence soared. He continued to sell these mid-priced products to everyone non-stop. End of this chapter. Chapter 308. Want to get something for nothing? No way. The various alchemical props introduced by Anduin immediately captured everyone's attention, especially the enforcers and field staff of the Department of Magical Accidents and Catastrophes. By the end of the demonstration, these individuals were gathered around, creating a bustling market-like atmosphere. Can these magic-forbidden handcuffs restrain 2 people at the same time? Asked a practical-minded enforcer. Are these handcuffs really that effective? Try them on me. Hey, untie them quickly. Wearing them for more than 10 seconds consumes more magic power than a battle, exclaimed another enforcer. Hey, I tried your self-test pocket watch, and it immediately raised an alarm. What? You say it means I have a broken bone? How is that possible? I didn't even know I was injured, said a nervous Auror. After a more thorough inspection, it was discovered that he indeed had a cracked rib from a previous battle, and he was promptly sent away for treatment. Meanwhile, many employees personally tested the protective gloves in actual combat exercises. After activation, they played with a transparent shield for a while and were reluctant to return it because they found it so useful. Seeing everyone so excited, Anduin slowed down the demonstration. Fortunately, he had brought plenty of samples, giving them more time to experience the products. All right, let's give Anduin some time to continue, Minister Budnor said, calming the excited employees. He then turned to Anduin. Moody mentioned you have a tracking device. Can you show us that? Hearing Minister Budnor's request, the Ministry of Magic employees put away their curiosity, returned to their original positions, and looked at Anduin expectantly. Okay, Minister, let's continue, Anduin said, understanding that these officials' time was precious. He took out a pair of glasses from the display table and addressed everyone. These are the tracking goggles I developed. They incorporate a tracking charm I created, capable of identifying multiple elements and locking onto relevant ones. The elements that can be captured include blood, scent, footprints, heat, and more. I also added a transformation camouflage function, allowing them to turn into ordinary glasses. Whether investigating a crime scene, tracking suspects, or engaging in battles with poor visibility, these goggles are highly versatile. Anduin demonstrated by putting on the goggles, tapping them lightly with his wand, and transforming them into ordinary gold-rimmed glasses, making him look like an office worker. You can try them yourself, Minister, Anduin said, handing out 4 more pairs of goggles to Minister Budnor and 3 directors. After putting on the glasses, Budnor activated them as Anduin demonstrated. She felt as if she had discovered a new world, carefully examining the mottled fluorescence around her. Anduin explained the various light spots symbolized under the vision of the tracing spell. Minister Budnor fiddled with the glasses obsessively before realizing there was still business to attend to. She turned to the official of the Department of Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. Bianca, try using this piece of equipment to see if it works, Minister Budnor instructed. Yes, Minister, Bianca nodded, taking out a neatly folded cloth bag from her belongings. Bianca opened her arms, revealing a few dazzling feathers inside. At this moment, Anduin, Minister Budnor, and the 3 directors, all wearing tracking goggles, noticed a few light-colored lines slowly appearing on the feathers. Anduin recognized it as the scent of the feathers themselves, but he couldn't identify the specific bird from a distance. He could only guess that they were wing feathers of some kind of bird, shimmering with a light golden hue, looking quite gorgeous. It's effective. It can be identified, my lord, Bianca said, her face brimming with excitement as she looked at Budnor. Minister Budnor nodded in satisfaction and then turned his attention back to Anduin. You mean you enchanted these goggles with a tracing charm? Is that what it's called? Budnor inquired. Yes, my lord. This is a new spell I developed, and it was published in the journal Century Charms last year. Recently, I have also been writing a paper on this new type of alchemy tool, Anduin explained. Is there a spell? Budnor asked, looking at Anduin with appreciation. Young and promising wizards like Anduin were rare, and Budnor's curiosity was piqued. Ask for a spell? This Minister Budnor is probably trying to get it for free. Even if I had it, I wouldn't just give it away. If I let you learn the spell, how could I still sell this equipment? Anduin thought to himself. I'm sorry, my lord. This is a new spell, and it took me a lot of time to complete its preliminary optimization. Even if I tried to translate it now, it would probably be less coherent than a whole sonnet, Anduin replied with a slightly apologetic expression. Budnor nodded helplessly. She realized she had been a bit too eager. How could a newly published spell already have a fully developed incantation? She had been too impatient. How much do these tracking glasses cost? Budnor asked, perhaps thinking the previous name was too awkward and opting for a simpler term. Tracing glasses, enchanted handcuffs, self-check pocket watches, and protective gloves are all part of a series of products, priced at 50 galleons each. Their quality and function are much stronger than amulets, and their shelf life is at least 2 years. For example, the self-check pocket watch is even considered a semi-permanent product, Anduin explained, adopting Budnor's term for the tracking glasses. He knew it was time to negotiate, and he was ready. He anticipated that Amelia would try to lower the price, so he quoted the highest price he expected. When pricing alchemy items, in addition to considering the functions of the props, another important factor is the duration of the magic. For instance, brooms that can last for decades are priced in the hundreds, even thousands of galleons. Anduin's products were mass-produced with magic lathes, and the materials used were not particularly high quality, so the enchantments on them couldn't last for an extended period. End of this chapter. Chapter 309. Purpose. Purchasing an alchemy item with a shelf life of only 2 years at the price of 50 gold galleons is not cheap, to be honest. Therefore, after hearing Anduin's quotation, Minister Badenoch did not reply immediately. Instead, he turned around and gathered the 3 other directors, forming a small circle to discuss something in low voices. Although the functions of these 4 pieces of equipment are good, the price you quoted is still unacceptable to us, Amelia said, standing halfway up with a bit of hesitation. In that case, Anduin put on a sincere expression. If the Ministry of Magic is willing to purchase more than 50 pieces of these 4 types of equipment at one time, I can give you a 10% discount, similar to the discount on amulets. After hearing Anduin's reply, Amelia lowered her head and thought for a moment. She then whispered to Minister Badenoch, and after a brief discussion, she turned back to Anduin. The shelf life of the self-check pocket watch is long enough. We can accept the original price of 50 galleons per piece. We can also afford the order price of 40 galleons you mentioned for protective gloves with an 8% discount. However, we hope to reduce the cost a little more on the magic-proof handcuffs and tracking glasses. Anduin pondered for a while. They were willing to accept the original price of 50 galleons for the self-check pocket watch, but wanted a lower price for the enchanted handcuffs and tracking glasses. The Ministry of Magic's primary interest in this demonstration seemed to be these 2 items. Based on the previous actions of several officials, Anduin deduced that they were dealing with a situation that required tracking a target. Was it a fugitive, smugglers, or some kind of magical creature? Anduin shook his head. These matters were not his concern. However, judging from the attitudes of the officials, he realized they planned to purchase a large number of enchanted handcuffs and tracking glasses. Establishing a good relationship with the Ministry of Magic could be beneficial. All right, Anduin finally decided. Since he wanted to build a relationship, he should make a significant concession this time. It seems you are very interested in these 2 items. As a gesture of goodwill for our first cooperation with the Ministry of Magic, I have a special offer for you. Special offer? Amelia raised her eyebrows and looked at Anduin intently. Yes, for the first 50 items ordered by the Ministry of Magic, I will charge you 25 galleons each for the arcane handcuffs and the tracking glasses. Consider it an opening discount. After the Ministry of Magic purchases these 2 items, the price will return to 30 galleons each. What do you think? Even with this offer, Anduin calculated that he would still have a profit margin of 40%, though it was less profitable than other products. When Amelia and Minister Badenoch heard the offer, they couldn't help but exchange joyful glances. The price was much lower than they had expected, which was a pleasant surprise. Now, not only Minister Badenoch, but even Amelia looked at Anduin with kindness and appreciation. It seemed that the student her brother had been talking about was indeed remarkable. She guessed that Anduin had deliberately offered a low price, almost at a loss, to achieve his own purpose. At this moment, in the eyes of these senior officials of the Ministry of Magic, Anduin appeared to be a conscientious businessman who understood the bigger picture. Very well, we accept your offer. Do you have any other products to demonstrate to us? If not, we can discuss the order, Minister Badenoch said impatiently. Minister Badenoch's goal was indeed only a few of the products. It was likely that when Moody had been boasting to her earlier, he had described. Anduin introduced the functions of a few props, which immediately caught the minister's attention. The initial items were just simple gadgets, but the real treasures were yet to come. Anduin grinned slightly, sensing the anticipation. I'm sorry, Minister, but I may need a bit more of your time. I have several more products to show you, and I believe they won't disappoint, Anduin said with a slightly apologetic expression. It's quite all right. Your talent never ceases to amaze. Please, continue, Minister Badenoch replied, her mood lifted by Anduin's impressive display so far. Although they had already discussed the most interesting parts, she was willing to give him more time. Thank you for your kind words, Minister. Next, allow me to introduce 2 pieces of well-crafted semi-permanent equipment, tactical vests and tactical leather boots. The main body of this tactical vest is made from ream cattle hide. It features a layer of stress armor enchantment and a humanoid armor enchantment, providing multiple layers of protection for the wearer. Additionally, it includes an illusion spell for quick concealment and a levitation charm to slow or even eliminate fall damage, even if you fall from a broomstick. This vest also has a constant water and fire spell, ensuring the user's safety in extreme environments. The 2 upper body pockets are enchanted with the undetectable extension charm, offering ample space for various necessary items. There are also potion pouches and wand pouches on both sides, allowing for quick reactions and counterattacks. Moreover, the charms on the tactical vest can automatically replenish over time. As long as the vest remains undamaged, its shelf life exceeds 5 years. Now, regarding the tactical leather boots. Anduin had become quite adept at salesmanship. It took him only a few minutes to introduce both the tactical vest and the tactical leather boots. The tactical vest was priced at 200 galleons, while the tactical leather boots were 150 galleons. The crowd listened intently to Anduin's explanation, their eyes filled with longing, including Minister Badenoch, who had already obtained her desired item. She hadn't expected Anduin to have such impressive products. During the demonstration session, the surrounding people eagerly tested the 2 types of equipment. After answering some questions and observing the staff's reactions, Anduin noticed a preference for the defensive tactical vests. The tactical leather boots, which enhanced mobility, seemed less popular. Perhaps they felt that magic already provided sufficient mobility through apparition or broomsticks. However, some individuals, such as the deputy captain of the strike team and wizards like Scrimger, the current deputy director of the Auror office, showed more interest in the tactical leather boots. They understood the importance of short-range, high-speed maneuvers in battle, whether for moving or dodging curses. In the eyes of duelists, agility and body skills were crucial. End of this chapter. Chapter 310, The Beautiful Wand. Regardless of their individual preferences, Anduin's products left a deep impression on everyone. During the subsequent price negotiation, neither Minister Badenoch nor Director Amelia attempted to lower the price. They directly agreed to his initial quotation, perhaps because Anduin's preferential behavior had impressed them, Or maybe they didn't want to haggle over such high-quality products. This made Anduin very happy. Once the Ministry of Magic sets the price, it means that their employees will purchase products from his store at this rate. After all, Aurors need to add value to themselves, and some safeguards are indispensable. After completing the demonstration of his product series, Anduin introduced the humanoid target, publicizing his definition of power value outside of Hogwarts for the first time. Establishing a standard is insignificant if it doesn't exist, but once a standard is set, those who create it will benefit the most. Anduin's visit to the Ministry of Magic was not just about selling products. He aimed to promote his standards and ideas to the senior leaders of the wizarding world. Power? Minister Boudinot, Amelia, and the others looked at Anduin in confusion after hearing his explanation. That's right. This is the standard unit I use to measure the strength of spells. It involves very complex calculation formulas, not only for impact force, but also for continuous and hidden damage of spells, Anduin explained with a smile. Of course, it's so complicated that you may not fully understand it. Just know that the higher the number displayed, the more powerful the spell. If you don't believe me, you can try it yourself. The humanoid target I made is very durable, so feel free to cast spells at it. The more valuable aspect of the humanoid target is its rune structure. Although it cannot be mass-produced with a magic lathe, and each one has to be handcrafted by Anduin, the material cost is similar to that of tactical vests. Therefore, every time a humanoid target is sold, Anduin reaps huge profits, which is why he is so eager to sell it. So if you cast a spell on it, you can measure the caster's proficiency with that spell? Minister Boudinot seemed to understand a bit. Exactly. For example, the spell Stupefy typically has a power of about 40 points for a normal adult wizard, Anduin said, raising his wand and casting the spell at the humanoid target. Boom! The spell hit the target with a crisp sound, causing it to shake slightly before displaying the value 40 on its chest. Aurors, or strikers who have undergone combat training, will have better control over the spell, resulting in a higher value, Anduin continued, casting another spell that scored 60 points. I see, Minister Boudinot nodded thoughtfully. However, she was still a bit skeptical. Why were the numbers always integers? Was it really that accurate? Azalea, come and try it yourself, Minister Boudinot said, looking around and selecting a non-combatant staff member. Me? Oh! Azalea pointed at herself with a slightly confused expression. After a moment, she realized what was being asked and stepped forward, drawing her wand. Azalea's wand matched her features, a wand as white as ivory. An aspen wand? Anduin raised his brows slightly, surprised to see that this beautiful woman was a master of spells. Azalea took a deep breath, aimed at the humanoid target, and cast a Stupefy spell. The magic spell hit the human target, displaying a value of 42 points. Seeing this, Anduin frowned with some doubts. Wasn't it said that aspenwood wand holders excel at dueling magic? Is this beauty hiding her strength? He glanced at her with a slightly playful look before returning to his normal expression. After Azalea saw the numbers on the target, she pursed her lips in embarrassment and then turned her head to look at Minister Boudinot. Does that mean I still have to try again? Try again. Use flaming and freezing spells, Minister Boudinot instructed. He still didn't fully understand this new concept, but if what Anduin said was true, then this humanoid target would be very important to the Ministry of Magic. Yes, my lord, Azalea responded. She fixed her eyes on the target in front of her and cast a burning curse. The dummy displayed a much higher number than before, 61. Seeing this, Anduin smiled coldly to himself. This beautiful witch must have deliberately controlled her magic power when casting the stun spell earlier. However, if she thought that using the same magic power for a spell like Blazing Flames would produce similar values, she was mistaken. Elemental magic casting is different from control spells. Wizards with poor affinity for elemental runes will have very low mana conversion when casting spells, resulting in much lower power. Conversely, those with a high affinity for elemental runes will see much higher power using the same magic power. After Azalea saw the value on the humanoid target, she was visibly stunned, and everyone around her looked at her in surprise. With the burning flame curse, how could this value suddenly be so much higher? Minister Badenoch asked Anduin with some doubts. Anduin glanced at Azalea, but decided not to expose her. He was curious to see why she wanted to hide her strength. He explained to Minister Badenoch, "As I said, the power value calculated by the humanoid target is not just a simple impact force. Under the same conditions, the damage caused by flames is definitely higher than that caused by a stun spell. Azalea also seems to have a good affinity for elemental runes, which is why the value is different." "I see," Minister Badenoch said thoughtfully. He then looked at Azalea again. "You can step back now. I'll let someone else try." Minister Badenoch turned his head to look at Moody, who was laughing with a ferocious expression on his face. He had been very curious about this humanoid target and had wanted to try it himself for a long time. He didn't even know that Anduin had such a useful thing before. End of this chapter. Chapter 311, Violent Moody. Moody leaned on his crutches and strutted forward to the human target. With an aggressive pull, he drew out his wand and, without chanting a spell, raised his hand. A powerful spell blasted out. Boom! The humanoid target, struck hard by the curse, toppled over like a knocked-over tumbler. It hit the ground with a snap, bounced back, and then violently swung on the spot. After a moment, the target finally regained its calm and displayed a value, 358. Wow! The spectators couldn't help but exclaim in amazement. Even several directors and Minister Badenoch looked at Moody with surprise. They knew Moody was strong, but they had no real idea of just how powerful he was. Was his strength equal to 3 aurors? 4? No one could say for sure. But now, with his strength presented as a standardized power value, Moody's prowess was evident. To put it in perspective, an ordinary employee had just scored a value of 40. Moody's score was 9 times that. "Haha, Anduin, I haven't even exerted much force yet. Your little target won't be able to handle it," Moody laughed boldly, joking with Anduin. Anduin was secretly wiping off his sweat. "Moody, Minister Badenoch asked you to test the product, not destroy it," he thought. Fortunately, the humanoid target was an improved second-generation product. Anduin had tested it himself and knew it could withstand spells with a power of up to 500 points. Beyond that, he wasn't sure, as he couldn't hit 500 points with all his strength. Don't worry, the humanoid target has a good self-healing function. As long as you don't use black magic like the Calamity spell to burn it completely, there won't be any big problems, Anduin reassured, though he wasn't entirely confident. "That's good. Then I can let go of my hands and feet and have a good time. Bones to pieces." Moody grinned, turned around, and focused on accumulating energy. He then unleashed another powerful spell. Boom! The louder noise echoed in the rehearsal hall, causing some wizards to cover their ears. This time, the humanoid target didn't fall backward as before. The power of the bone-crushing curse wasn't reflected in the impact. Instead, the target was covered with hideous cracks, as if it was about to explode. Seeing the target in this state, everyone thought it was completely broken. They all looked at Anduin. Even Moody gave him an embarrassed look, as if to say, "You said it would be fine, right?" Amelia took half a step forward, ready to negotiate with Anduin. If the target was broken during the demonstration, they wouldn't pay for it. But before she could speak, a sharp-eyed striker pointed at the broken target and shouted, "Look, it's slowly recovering, and the value is also revealed." The crowd turned to look at the target. Sure enough, the cracks created by the bone-crushing curse were healing at a noticeable speed. The target's body was almost back to normal, and a string of bright red values appeared in front of everyone. 489 points. Hiss! Everyone around couldn't help but gasp in amazement. They were astonished by Moody's strength. The values he had displayed before were already impressive, but this was even more exaggerated. At the same time, they were quite shocked by the resilience of the humanoid target. The humanoid target was impressive. Despite being hit by such a powerful spell, it continued to function normally and showed signs of recovery. Anduin was taken aback by Moody's power. It was exaggeratedly strong. In previous tests, Anduin had to use the God Slash to achieve similar results. Moody, seeing the effect on the humanoid target, laughed and gave Anduin a thumbs up. "This test target is really good. Remember to sell me one after the demonstration," he said. The people around, seeing that even Moody was impressed, eagerly stepped forward to try their own skills. However, Minister Budeno intervened to stop them. Qujing, there will be opportunities for you to train in the future. Let's negotiate the price with Anduin first, he said, calling everyone back. Minister Budeno's satisfaction with the humanoid target was evident, and it seemed likely that they would purchase at least one. Anduin, realizing the practice effect of the humanoid target far exceeded expectations, decided to raise the price. Initially, he planned to sell it for 500 galleons, but now, a humanoid target like the one in front of you can be used for at least 5 years. You've seen its resistance strength and the extremely accurate power value statistics system. The price for each target is 800 gold galleons, and it needs to be ordered a week in advance, Anduin explained with a slight smile. The advance order was necessary because the targets couldn't be mass-produced by a lathe. Anduin had to process each one himself. Moreover, the effect produced by a lathe wouldn't be as good as the current one. After hearing Anduin's offer, neither Minister Budeno nor Amelia tried to lower the price. They finally settled on a price of 750 galleons, indicating their high expectations for the humanoid target after the demonstration. Everyone, finally, I will introduce 2 newly developed magic props. I believe they can assist you in frontline duties, Anduin announced, just as everyone thought he had finished introducing all the products. The attendees were intrigued by the 2 props Anduin took out. They were 2 1-meter-long metal rods, the semi-finished products Anduin had shown during the lathe test, now completed. "Oh, I wonder what kind of surprise you have for us," Minister Budeno said, increasingly amazed by Anduin. Despite his young age, Anduin consistently presented impressive innovations. "These 2 props, I call them interference generators," Anduin said, placing the 2 props on the table. End of this chapter. Chapter 312, Jammers. Interference generator? When the people around heard Anduin mention this strange name, they couldn't figure it out immediately. They could only look at Anduin quietly, waiting for his explanation. Their functions are actually very simple. One of them is a shielding jammer that can cast shielding spells and muggle-repelling spells. Just input magic power and insert it into the ground to activate it. The coverage range is 100 meters. No matter what happens within this range, no movement or noise will disturb the muggles. It has a very promising application when performing duties in muggle communities. For example, if a battle breaks out in an area where muggles gather, activating this item will prevent the danger of disturbing or hurting muggles. Or, after an incident occurs, you can use this item to protect the scene in advance and avoid muggle interference, Anduin explained, holding up one of the metal poles. "Oh!" Minister Budnor, intrigued by Anduin's explanation, turned his head and glanced at Fudge. This device seemed quite suitable for the reversal of accidental magic incident team, often nicknamed Asswipes by the Ministry of Magic. This team had to shield the scene after every incident, expel the muggles, repair the damaged site, and follow the memory cancellation command to erase the muggles' memories. Connery Fudge's eyes lit up upon hearing the function of this device. This could save his department a lot of trouble. His subordinates often complained about the long hours spent on duty, and this device could significantly shorten their working time. Moreover, this equipment could also be issued to the Aurors, allowing them to use it before fighting dark wizards, thus saving a lot of trouble in erasing memories. Most of their time was spent cleaning up after the Aurors, leading to occasional friction between the 2 departments. The Aurors often left the mess for them to solve, always acting superior, as if they were the higher department of the Department of Magical Accidents and Disasters. Fudge noticed many of his subordinates giving him meaningful looks, clearly indicating that the more of these devices, the better. It would be best if the Aurors had one each, so they could learn to clean up their own messes. Understanding his subordinates' opinions, Fudge looked at Minister Budnor and nodded sincerely. They liked this device very much and wanted it. "I see. You can continue with the introduction," Minister Budnor nodded to Fudge, understanding his thoughts, and then looked at Anduin, signaling him to continue. "Okay, my lord. In addition to the shielding jammer, I have also developed another jammer, which I call the anti-apparition jammer. As the name suggests, it can cast anti-apparition spells over a wide area with a coverage diameter of 100 meters. Within this range, wizards cannot leave the scene through apparition. Of course, this interference affects both enemies and allies. Even wizards on our side cannot use apparition to leave. Additionally, these two types of jammers have a linking function. By linking multiple jammers, the range of influence can be expanded. I also added a mobile function to the anti-apparition jammer. As long as a wizard continues to input magic power while holding it, it can continuously cast the anti-apparition spell, making it useful even during pursuits, Anduin explained in an orderly manner. Hearing Anduin's introduction, it wasn't just Fudge who was impressed. Everyone, including Minister Budnor and the three directors, were equally intrigued. Moody and the other Aurors couldn't help but stare in awe. They immediately grasped the strategic significance of this new equipment. With it, the success rate of capturing fugitives would significantly increase. After all, this was an anti-apparition spell that could be moved and cast, a highly valuable tool. Typically, Aurors and Strikers use anti-apparition spells during arrest missions, but it usually requires one wizard to continuously cast the spell, which is inefficient. Moreover, moving and casting this type of spell is extremely challenging. Often, during duty, they would engage in combat and chase dark wizards, only for the targets to escape once they moved out of the spell's range. We are very interested in these two items. What is the time limit for using them, and how much do they cost? Minister Bodno exchanged glances with his colleagues, confirming the usefulness of these pieces of equipment. They aim to acquire them at the best possible price. A shielding jammer costs 120 gold galleons, and an anti-apparition jammer costs 180 gold galleons. They have a service life of up to 2 years. The Agrippa alloy used in these devices is quite expensive, not to mention the costs of rune inscriptions, energy storage components, and radiation stabilization devices, Anduin explained, sparing no effort to justify the price. Upon hearing the quotation, Minister Bodino was visibly dissatisfied. After a round of bargaining led by Amelia, they settled on a final price of 90 galleons for a shielding jammer and 140 galleons for an anti-apparition jammer. With the demonstration of all the products in Anduin's arsenal complete, many wizards around still seemed eager for more. Anduin, you have truly opened our eyes today, Minister Bodino remarked with a slight smile. He then addressed the others. As for the product demonstration of Silver Lightning Alchemy Company and the risk classification assessment, let's move on to other matters first. Turning to Anduin and the directors, she continued. Next, Anduin and the directors will come to my office to discuss the order. Moody, as the Auror commander, you should join us as well. We will handle the registration of Anduin's company after we finalize the order and related details. Since this is not an ordinary company and it sells tactical equipment, some specifics need to be included in the agreement. Minister Bodino maintained her resolute demeanor, quickly organizing everything before leading Anduin out of the training hall. Anduin, I heard that your academic papers are very popular in Cairo. It is said that you are a strong contender for next year's International Alchemy Conference Pioneering Contribution Gold Award. Minister Bodino continued to chat with Anduin as they made their way to the office. End of this chapter. Chapter 313. Sending Beggars? You're too proud, Anduin said, shaking his head politely. Professor Flitwick and Professor Burns helped arrange it, and I haven't written anything yet. Let's not overdo things that are still uncertain. It's good to be optimistic. You are too modest, Amelia interrupted with a smile. I often hear my brother mention you. He thinks that even in the Egyptian Alchemy Research Center, you are the most talented alchemist in the past 10 years. He often mentions in his recent letters from Cairo that the echo spell and tracing spell you developed are very popular among local scholars. The reason you did not win at the last International Alchemy Conference was mainly due to your young age. Really? Professor Burns seldom mentions this to me. He's been busy with the restoration of runes in the ancient ruins recently, and we haven't been in contact for a while. Since Burns resigned from Hogwarts, he had been living in Egypt, the center of alchemy. Before that, they had frequent contacts, mainly academic exchanges. Through his connection, Anduin got to know quite a few alchemy masters in Cairo, and his alchemy skills improved rapidly with their help. Professor Burns often published his academic papers in Cairo, held seminars on his achievements, and actively submitted his works to the International Alchemy Congress. The International Alchemy Conference is held every 3 years, and the last one was 2 years ago. He did not win an award that time, and it was rumored to be because of the joint publication with Professor Burns. He did not expect there to be other reasons. Our British wizarding world is considered to be half an alchemy desert. It has been a long time since we have cultivated a true alchemy master. The last time we won an award at the International Alchemy Conference was when Burns himself did. Unfortunately, he finally took the spell optimization and repair route. Minister Boudinot shook his head regretfully. It's a pity that we have the most prestigious alchemist, Dumbledore, in the British wizarding world, but we don't have other alchemists who can match him. So, Anduin, you have to work harder. If you can shine in the international wizarding world, it will be an honor for the entire British wizarding community. Minister Boudinot considered it for a while and added, if you can win honors at the next International Alchemy Conference, I can even personally nominate you for a third-class medal of the Order of Merlin at the Wizengamot. After hearing this, Anduin pouted a little speechlessly. Is it necessary to put so much pressure on me? I didn't care about the awards at the Alchemy Conference before. My only interest was in academics. Now I have to make it into a political task. I will do my best, Minister. Although he couldn't resist in his heart, Anduin still had to say something politely. After all, the Ministry of Magic is now his Party A. After several people entered the minister's office, they ended this topic. Minister Boudinot asked Anduin to sit next to him for a while. She first signed a document and sent it to the 5th floor, asking them to prepare some formalities for the establishment of a new company. Then, she dragged several directors and Moody to the side and discussed in a small conference room. Obviously, their discussion decided the quantity of equipment to be ordered. Our budget is limited, and the supply of magic-proof handcuffs and tracking glasses must be sufficient. We came here for these pieces of equipment. Don't forget the recent operation. Amelia emphasized at the beginning of the discussion. That's right. Although this matter is not a big trouble, the damage caused is not small. Maybe we should fight for a joint operation by the multinational Ministry of Magic. Bianca, director of the Department of Management and Control of Fantastic Beasts, said eagerly. Put it down. Don't get involved with the Ministry of Magic of other countries. Moody sneered and retorted. Otherwise, there will be a lot of trouble, and we haven't even cleaned up our own mess yet. Minister Boudinot quickly intervened, seeing the conversation veering off course. All right, the current situation is still under control. This is our business, and what we should be discussing now is the procurement matter. Yes, Minister, the previously arguing individuals responded promptly, realizing the need to focus. The 2 pieces of equipment we need to purchase immediately are indeed urgent, especially the tracking glasses. They don't actually require much of our budget, thanks to the discounts Anduin provided, Fudge added. The real issue now is the other pieces of equipment, which are also quite valuable. Moody, seeing through Fudge's intentions, retorted sharply. What do you mean? Are you interested in those shielding jammers? If you ask me, that item is useless. We might as well order a few more anti-apparition jammers. You, Fudge, known for his generally good-natured demeanor within the Ministry of Magic, turned red with anger at Moody's sarcasm. Enough, Moody, Amelia interjected, glaring at him. In the Ministry of Magic, all departments need to work together. It's not just up to the Department of Law Enforcement. The Department of Magical Accidents and Disasters also has its own needs. There's nothing wrong with allocating the budget to buy a few shielding jammers. Fudge, still fuming, thought to himself, how many? Why are you treating us like beggars? You and the Department of Legal Enforcement always look down on our Department of Magical Accidents and Disasters. Just wait, I'll seize my opportunity in the future. Minister Boudinot, attempting to smooth things over, said, All right, I understand the value of this equipment. Stop arguing. Each department will be assigned its share. He then turned to Fudge. Of course, the current frontline battle needs are more urgent, so resources must be prioritized towards aurors and strikers. Please be considerate. Yes, Minister, Fudge replied reluctantly. If we are prioritizing the frontline teams, shouldn't we buy more amulets and defensive gloves? These are crucial pieces of equipment that can directly impact the battle. And don't forget the tactical vests. Bianca, though not from the law enforcement department, chimed in energetically. No, the price of tactical vests and tactical leather boots is too high for large-scale procurement. We should prioritize amulets and defensive gloves, Amelia suggested, interrupting. End of this chapter. Chapter 314, Orders. Amelia is right. We still have to consider the cost issue, and I'm going to buy a few humanoid targets for daily training, Minister Badenow agreed. That humanoid target is indeed a good thing, and the concept of power value that Anduin mentioned before is also very valuable, Amelia nodded in approval. Maybe. Minister Badenow thought for a moment, then looked up at the rest of the people. In the future, we can use humanoid targets to test our preparations for field entry and include them in the promotion assessment for frontline staff. This way, the results we get will be more standardized, won't they? After hearing what Minister Badenow said, several directors lowered their heads in thought. In the Ministry of Magic, these departments are equipped with both internal and external staff, and the minister's suggestion would make the assessment process more convenient and standardized. However, they also realized it might add more work for them. Huh? Seeing the silence of the crowd, Badenow guessed their reluctance and frowned. I don't think there's a problem. Minister, wise decision. My lord is truly far-sighted. Seeing Minister Badenow's expression, the directors knew he had made up his mind, and their opinions wouldn't change it. They immediately expressed their agreement. Moody, standing to the side, looked at them teasingly and secretly laughed. You still want to play tricks on the minister? You really want to die? Okay, let's make a decision. I decided to order 3 humanoid targets first, 1 for each department. In the future, a power test will be added to the ability assessment, and more targets will be added if conditions permit, Minister Badenow concluded. Yes, my Lord Minister. The directors saw it was a foregone conclusion and obediently complied. Since the procurement target has been determined, let's discuss the number of equipment ordered and the priority of equipment. After all, Anduin's production also takes time, Minister Badenow continued. Under his guidance, the directors determined the specific details of the procurement. Anduin didn't have to wait long before he was called into the small meeting room. Anduin, this is the specific amount of equipment we ordered. Take a look. The enchantment handcuffs and tracking glasses need to be supplied first. How long do you think it will take? Amelia pushed a piece of parchment towards Anduin, who had just sat down across from her. Anduin picked up the parchment, and after seeing the numbers recorded on it, felt a burst of joy in his heart. As expected of the Ministry of Magic, it was a generous order. The equipment ordered included 100 defensive amulets, 80 communication amulets, 50 sonic boom amulets, and 160 flash amulets. The ordered amulets alone were worth 3,160 galleons. The Ministry of Magic also ordered 80 pairs of tracking glasses and magic-proof hats, which are estimated to equip most of the field personnel. They ordered 50 pairs of defensive gloves and 10 self-test pocket watches, totaling 6,800 galleons. The order quantity of the 2 kinds of jammers varied. The shielding jammers required only 5 pieces, but the anti-apparition jammers ordered 20 pieces, with a combined price of 2,850 galleons. Additionally, they ordered 3 humanoid targets for 2,250 galleons. Unfortunately, they didn't need any tactical backpacks or tactical leather boots, indicating a very targeted order. But Anduin didn't mind. Besides this large-scale supply, many members of the Ministry of Magic would likely come to buy separately later. Just for this batch of orders alone, he could reap 15,060 galleons, and only he knew the true value of this opportunity. Anduin's heart swelled with satisfaction at the thought of a net profit reaching 10,000 galleons. Such an income was more than satisfactory. However, he knew that while bulk orders were exhilarating, selling such a large quantity of products at once would not always be feasible. Future sales would likely depend on refurbishing and retailing old products unless he could attract more customers. I will expedite the production of tracking glasses and magic handcuffs for you. They should be ready within 3 days. The rest of the items can be completed within a month. How does that sound? Anduin pondered for a moment. If he personally oversaw the production, this timeline was entirely achievable. Really? Minister Badenow and several directors were visibly surprised at the prospect of receiving the goods in just 3 days, especially considering there were over 100 alchemy items. In terms of quality, you must not cut corners. If the quality is subpar, we won't accept the products, Amelia interjected firmly. Rest assured, I wouldn't deceive the Ministry of Magic. You can inspect the products yourselves. If the quality is not up to standard, I guarantee a free return, Anduin replied confidently. If you can deliver that quickly, it would be excellent. By the way, after completing these 2 items, please prioritize the anti-apparition disruptors. The humanoid targets can be delivered last, Minister Badenow added, feeling somewhat reassured by Anduin's confidence. No problem. The customer is Merlin, after all. I will do my utmost to meet your requirements. Anduin nodded and smiled. Well, if everything goes smoothly, you will have done us a great favor, Minister Badenow acknowledged, then produced a piece of parchment. This is the risk assessment report on your company's products. Among the products you are currently selling, defensive amulets, communication amulets, protective gloves, and self-test pocket watches are classified as XX-level items and can be sold to all wizards. The other 2 types of amulets, along with magic-proof handcuffs, tracking glasses, tactical vests, leather boots, and humanoid targets, are classified as XXX-level items and can only be sold to the Ministry of Magic or its staff. When selling, remember to register the purchaser's Ministry of Magic employee account. As for the 2 types of jammers, they are XXX-level items. They are not allowed to be sold outside of Ministry of Magic officials. Even if Ministry personnel wish to purchase them, they must present the corresponding approval slip. If you violate these regulations, your company will be in breach of Ministry of Magic laws. Do you understand? Minister Badenow maintained a stern expression, emphasizing the seriousness of the matter. I understand, Anduin replied earnestly, then asked curiously, why is the humanoid target classified as XXX? It doesn't seem harmful. Level XXX represents items that capable wizards can handle. The humanoid target has a mechanism for firing spells, which can be dangerous for weaker adult wizards and juvenile wizards, Minister Badenow explained. End of this chapter. Chapter 315, Hazard Classification. Then what if I remove the mechanism that emits the spell and only leave the part that withstands the attack, heals itself, and displays the power value? Anduin asked, picking up the conversation. Since casting spells is considered dangerous, he thought he could just remove that feature to save costs. After all, collecting second-hand wands is troublesome. If the aggressiveness is removed, it can be classified as XX, Minister Budnor said after a moment of thought. He then turned to Anduin. After removing the relevant functions, you can bring the equipment to the Ministry of Magic for an evaluation. If there are no issues, we can add a certification for the version without the spell-casting function. Okay, no problem, Anduin agreed. The humanoid target was the most valuable product in his hands, and it would be a pity if it could only be sold to the Ministry of Magic. By the way, if the offensive version is removed, will the price be lowered? Amelia interjected. She realized that the Ministry of Magic didn't necessarily need a humanoid target with spellcasting capabilities. It's just removing one of the simple wands, so let's reduce it by 50 galleons, Anduin replied, understanding Amelia's implication and reluctantly agreeing. Then let's order the XX version as well, so each one will cost 700 galleons, right? Amelia asked with a smile, feeling pleased to save another 150 galleons. Okay, Anduin replied helplessly. He then thought of something and looked at the group. By the way, if foreign ministries of magic or other companies want to purchase products above XXX from me, can I make sales? Cross-border companies like Gringotts also have corresponding needs for their own security. Minister Budnor and several directors exchanged glances, not expecting Anduin to think so far ahead. If a local family or company in the UK wants to purchase your products, XXX level props are not allowed to be sold. XXX level props require a qualification certificate from the Ministry of Magic, indicating the actual use and quantity, Budnor explained. As for foreign countries, in theory, as long as you are not in the UK, we don't care how you do business. However, XXX and XXX products are indeed more dangerous. If they are purchased by criminals and used for illegal purposes, it will be very troublesome and may even prompt inquiries from the ministries of magic in other countries. And XXXX level equipment is too powerful. To be honest, I don't recommend selling it to foreign institutions. My idea is to set XXX products as prohibited items and allow foreign customers to directly talk to the Ministry of Magic for XXX level equipment. There are no restrictions for grade XX, Budnor explained solemnly. So that's it, I understand, Anduin nodded. Although Budnor's decision might reduce his potential earnings, the endorsement of the Ministry of Magic meant a solid platform for his business, so he didn't show any dissatisfaction. It's good that you understand, Budnor said, feeling that Anduin was relatively easy to work with, both in communication and cooperation. Now that the details have been negotiated, let's sign the order and apply for an additional statement from the company. After all, the company you set up has a lot of product restrictions. We will mail you the official company documents afterward. Minister Budnor issued several magical contracts, asked Anduin to sign them, and then took out another document. This is a 30% deposit. You can exchange it for galleons at Gringotts. I hope we can have a happy cooperation. Happy cooperation. Anduin accepted the receipt with satisfaction and then left the office leisurely. Moody also followed him out, laughing as they went. He put his arm around Anduin's shoulders. You did it. I didn't expect your products to interest the minister so much. You've earned a lot this time. Don't worry, your share is guaranteed. Speaking of which, I really didn't expect Minister Budeno to place such a large order. Have you guys made any big moves recently, ordering so much combat equipment? Anduin speculated that his timing was just a coincidence, coinciding with the Ministry of Magic's peak demand. Don't ask about that, it's still classified, Moody replied seriously, shaking his head with a smile. We made a mistake with intelligence before, so now the management is stricter. Understood, Anduin nodded. He had to abide by many confidentiality regulations before, so he didn't press the topic further. Instead, he thought of something else and asked, why is product management so strict now? I thought the regulations were just to prevent some alchemy items from being sold to underage wizards. What about those shops like Borgin and Burke's? They seem to sell dark magic items. Nocturne Alley is different from Diagon Alley. Many shops there are in collusion with wizarding families. The new management method was established by Minister Budeno after he took office. Those old shops didn't adhere to the new laws, so we turned a blind eye to Nocturne Alley. Fortunately, they are more disciplined and don't sell prohibited items at will. However, their lives won't be easy for long. We are preparing to clean up these shops that operate in the gray area. Your timing is unfortunate with so many new rules. Maybe if the minister changes in the future, your products will be less restricted, Moody explained to Anduin, sharing what he could. Anduin realized this was a matter of familiarity and perhaps related to the Ministry of Magic's lack of authority. Although laws were clearly stated, adherence was subjective. Anduin wasn't prepared to be entirely compliant, as the Ministry of Magic was a significant client. However, he wondered if the unstable social order might actually benefit his business. He quickly dismissed the thought, questioning if this was the nature of an arms dealer. Shaking his head to clear his mind, Anduin went to find Vanessa. He discovered that Ginny had been taken away by Arthur, leaving only a cheerful Hog, who was rubbing against Vanessa's thigh, looking quite inappropriate. Seeing this, Anduin felt embarrassed. He stepped forward, kicked Hog away, and then dragged him back to Diagon Alley. Upon returning, he couldn't wait to go to Gringotts with the approval form from the Ministry of Magic. Seeing more than 4,000 real galleons, he felt relieved. Finally, he didn't have to worry about finances. Naturally, he didn't take all the money directly. Instead, Anduin bought a vault in Gringotts in his own name and deposited most of the funds there. End of this chapter. Chapter 3: Setting Up Shop. After returning home, Anduin rushed to the basement without delay. He turned on the lathe and within 3 days produced 80 pairs of enchanted handcuffs and tracking glasses. With the company and workshop now established, it was time to prepare the storefront. Anduin first focused on the first floor, where he planned to display some XX-level products for retail. However, he quickly noticed a problem. The space on the first floor was too large. The area exceeded 200 square meters, and he wasn't satisfied with the variety of goods he had. Some of his products were still banned by the Ministry of Magic, and even if he filled the space, it would look monotonous with heavily modernized items. To address this, Anduin decided to make some adjustments to the space. He partitioned a section 10 meters from the door, designating it as the main part of the store. This reduced the store space to about 30 square meters. After adding a counter, the remaining space would be even smaller, making the products appear less sparse. This setup would give customers the impression of a boutique alchemy store. With some added decorations, the interior would look more stylish. He also built another wall 10 meters behind the first partition, creating an area for testing products. Many of his items needed to be demonstrated in practice. The remaining space could be expanded as his business grew and more products were produced. With a clear plan, Anduin began the actual setup. He visited other stores in Diagon Alley to buy decorations, including lamps, counters, carpets, shelves, and wall decorations. He covered the 2 rooms with wallpaper to hide the rough stone walls. He also placed a few sets of exquisite chairs and a wine cabinet in a corner of the store, creating a space for receiving customers. Despite the store being only 30 square meters, it still couldn't be filled with his products. After 2 days of work, the interior of the store was complete, presenting a mysterious and simple style. All the furniture, including the counter, occasionally flashed with magical lines. A metal raven decoration on the counter would periodically spit out a small light like a firefly, which floated around the store, providing ambient lighting. These decorations, though not practical, were designed to enhance the store's luxurious atmosphere. With the interior done, Anduin turned his attention to the signboard outside. He kept it simple, putting up a plaque that read Silver Lightning Alchemy Company in silver characters on a black background, topped with his coat of arms. Once everything was in place, Anduin couldn't open the store immediately. He needed a permit from the Ministry of Magic. Fortunately, Minister Budnow was efficient, and 3 days later, the letter from the ministry arrived. With this, his company was officially established. For days, wizards passing by had been peeking through the curtains, curious about the new shop in Diagon Alley. However, Anduin had kept the lights off inside, and the front door locked, preventing any of these pedestrians from entering. Now, he could finally open the door to welcome guests. Anduin sat behind the counter on the first floor and waved his magic wand lightly. Instantly, the furniture and decorations in the room seemed to come to life. Candles, oil lamps, alchemical ravens, and other lighting fixtures illuminated the space. The signboard above the main entrance also seemed to come alive, with silver-white lightning occasionally flashing across its surface. On this otherwise ordinary day, Anduin's alchemy company opened in a rather low-key manner. Not long after he opened, the store welcomed its first visitor. Strictly speaking, this wasn't a customer, but someone coming to receive goods. Azalea had received an order from Director Bianca to go to Anduin, who had demonstrated alchemy products at the Ministry of Magic, to collect the first batch of goods. Before she left, the director had specifically instructed her to thoroughly inspect and test each item in person, ensuring everything was correct before making the second payment. This meticulous and somewhat tedious task had been assigned to her, likely because of her perceived inexperience. Azalea accepted the task readily, as she was quite interested in Anduin. She had been present at the product demonstration and found it quite impressive. This young wizard seemed like a treasure chest, constantly revealing new wonders. Should they try to win him over? A ripple of excitement stirred in Azalea's heart. Lost in thought, she soon arrived at Anduin's shop. She noticed that in just a few days the place had been beautifully decorated. The metal signboard and the faintly emerging patterns on it exuded a low-key yet luxurious feel. The coat of arms above the signboard, featuring a sword standing amidst crisscrossing lightning, caught her attention. Was this a symbol of a particular family? Azalea wondered, but didn't dwell on it. She pushed open the translucent glass door marked Business, and a crisp bell rang out. Anduin, who was experiencing the thrill of starting his business, quickly looked up from behind the counter. Unsure whether to say welcome, he saw that the visitor was Azalea. "Hello, Mr. Wilson. Do you remember me? Today is the day to deliver the 2 pieces of alchemy equipment, and I'm here to receive them," Azalea explained, admiring the shop's decor as she entered. Chapter 317, Joey and Gemma. "Of course I remember," Anduin said, squinting his eyes and smiling at her. There were many secrets hidden in Azalea, and her strength was certainly not as weak as Arthur had described. "I didn't expect your store to open so quickly," Azalea remarked, flicking her hair reservedly. She looked around the inside of the store, taking the opportunity to browse the products displayed on the shelves. However, there weren't many props on display at the moment. They were mostly the ones seen in the Ministry of Magic demonstration hall before. Notably, the humanoid targets and jammers were absent. She assumed Anduin hadn't replenished the stock yet, probably due to catching up with orders. "You're flattering me. My company was pretty much prepared beforehand, just waiting for a license from the Ministry of Magic, and I just opened my business. You're my first customer." Anduin replied with a polite smile. He then walked out from behind the counter and gestured towards the back door. "The Ministry of Magic's goods are all in the back. Come with me to check and accept them. There are a lot of things. Do you have any space props?" Azalea straightened her temples calmly and smiled. "Don't worry, since I'm here to pick up the goods. How could I be unprepared?" She followed Anduin to the inner room. The decoration style here was not much different from the outside, but it was more spacious and basically unfurnished. A long table was set up on one side of the room, with 2 large trays placed neatly on it. Glasses and handcuffs were stacked in the trays. "Just check the goods here slowly. If you encounter any problems, just call me. I have to watch the store in front," Anduin said, pointing to the goods on the tray before walking out leisurely. Seeing that Anduin left her there so confidently, Azalea shook her head speechlessly and then silently looked at the pile of equipment in front of her. She had to try every piece of equipment, which was really a tedious task. After walking out of the room, Anduin returned to the counter and lightly tapped a mirror on the table. Azalea's figure appeared in the mirror. The reason he was so confident about Azalea was mainly because he was prepared. He wasn't afraid of her causing trouble, but Azalea behaved quite honestly, standing there silently inspecting the goods. Anduin knew in his heart that there must be something more to this beautiful woman. Her strength was obviously good, but she still maintained the persona of a vase. However, Anduin didn't care about her secrets as long as she didn't provoke him. After all, he had many secrets himself. Ding! A crisp ringing of the bell interrupted Anduin's thoughts, signaling another customer had arrived. The location of Anduin's store in Diagon Alley was quite good, with a lot of foot traffic outside. It was now summer vacation, and a large number of old and new students who needed to buy teaching aids were going back and forth in Diagon Alley. So within a short time, the store was full of people. After all, a new store had suddenly appeared in the alley, and everyone wanted to come in, have a look, and join in the fun. Most of the visitors were underage wizards who dragged their parents into the store, looking around curiously. Then they saw the product descriptions and prices on the shelves. "My God, a defensive talisman costs 12 galleons? What kind of pocket watch is selling for 60 galleons? A parent of a young wizard exclaimed as he looked at the prices on the shelf. In the store, the retail price of products was much higher than the wholesale price. Anduin had raised the prices of all products by about 20% to let the members of the Ministry of Magic feel the price advantage. Facing the reactions of these customers, he just responded with a slight smile and didn't explain anything. After all, the effectiveness of his products spoke for itself. "You can buy it if you want, but you can't buy it if you don't." "Chief," a familiar voice called out, and Anduin turned his head. It was Joey, the leader of the Fourth grade, now promoted to the 5th grade and elected as a prefect alongside Mona. Anduin hadn't expected to meet him here. Joey, you don't have to be so formal outside of school. Are you here to buy new teaching aids in Diagon Alley? Anduin asked, smiling gently instead of maintaining his usual stern demeanor. You are our chief. That fact will never change, Joey replied, still dressed in his school attire. He was genuinely grateful to Anduin, who had helped him immensely. Because of Anduin, Joey now felt a sense of pride and belonging. I brought my cousin here today to purchase teaching aids. She will be starting school this year, Joey explained, stepping aside to reveal a little girl behind him. Gemma, this is the chief of our Slytherin house. Say hello. Hi, I'm Gemma Farley, the little girl said timidly. She was surprised to see her usually straightforward brother so respectful in front of this man. Hello. Anduin nodded slightly to the young witch, then turned to Joey. My shop just opened today. Feel free to pick anything you like as a gift for your sister. It's on me. Gemma and Joey exchanged excited glances. Gemma's eyes sparkled with excitement. Chief, you opened this alchemy firm? Joey realized they hadn't met by chance but had come to Anduin's own company. That's right. Don't these products look familiar? I used some of them during your training, Anduin said, gesturing around the shop. This is the protective glove you had Ibrahimovic and the others test, right? And the communication amulet. So all those tests were to prepare for starting this company? Joey examined the products more closely, recognizing many from Anduin's training sessions. Exactly. Pick what you like. The first one is free, Anduin said generously, clearly in a good mood. Thank you, Chief, Joey said, knowing Anduin's uncompromising nature. He looked around and selected a pair of protective gloves for Gemma. He had seen them tested at school and had always wanted a pair. By the way, Chief, is the humanoid target you made available for sale? Joey asked, remembering the frustration of queuing up to practice at school. Having his own humanoid target would be fantastic. Yes, but it can't be sold yet. It needs some modifications before it can be launched. Do you like that item very much? Anduin asked, raising an eyebrow curiously. End of this chapter. Chapter 318, New Product Ideas. That's right, Chief. It's a prop that can test one's own strength. Who wouldn't want it? When I practiced spells at home during the summer vacation, I always felt that something was missing. I later realized it was because I didn't know if I was making any progress. If you could see the power of your spells at any time, you'd be more motivated to practice, Joey said with excitement. Oh? Anduin seldom needed input from these young wizards. Seeing Joey's reaction, he began to consider whether he could develop some products for them. It's 800 galleons for a humanoid one. Can you afford that? Anduin asked Joey. What? So expensive? Joey's expression changed upon hearing Anduin's offer. Yes, the humanoid target is precious because it can withstand powerful spells, recover freely, and show the corresponding power value, Anduin explained. He wasn't lying. The most important part of the humanoid target was its core components, which included enough healing runes and energy-absorbing runes. Many materials were consumed to ensure sufficient resistance to blows. Then how many hits can the humanoid target resist? Joey asked curiously. After being at Hogwarts for so long, the most exaggerated thing he had seen was Anduin hitting more than 300 points. I haven't tried the limit value, but it's fine within 500 points, Anduin laughed. Hiss! Joey gasped. Was there really anyone in this world who could score 500 points? The highest score he had achieved before the end of the semester was only around 50. But many young wizards, or even normal adult wizards, don't have such high spell strength. Could you lower the upper limit of the power value and reduce the price? If the price is right, I think the humanoid target will be very popular. Joey suggested, surprised by the resistance and price of the humanoid target. Oh? Anduin fell into deep thought. Joey was right. He didn't need to make all the humanoid targets so resistant. So far, he had only seen Moody hit a value close to 500. Anduin had always had a kind of obsessive-compulsive disorder, pushing the relevant attributes to the extreme in his research. But for civilian use, such high strength wasn't necessary. Fewer runes could be inscribed, saving a lot of raw materials, and the price could be reduced significantly. Thinking of this, Anduin realized he had been confined by many inherent thoughts. Maybe he should start listening to his customers more. What you said makes sense, Anduin nodded to Joey. He gestured to the area where the seats were placed. Come on, let's sit down and chat. Anduin pulled Joey and Gemma to sit down and habitually took out a recording board. If we were to make a low-end version of the humanoid target, what price do you think would be appropriate, and what should be the upper limit of the power value? Joey pondered for a moment. I think most wizarding families could afford a price of 100 to 200 galleons. As for the upper limit of power, Joey looked at Anduin with some embarrassment. To be honest, I haven't been able to cast a spell with a power value above 100. I think a humanoid target with a power value of 100 is at least enough for a young wizard. If it's a humanoid target with a power limit of around 200, it could even meet the needs of most adult wizards. And for younger wizards, such as those under the 3rd grade, I feel that 30 points are enough. In fact, you could even make some younger versions, just for them. Like toys, there's no need to use so many materials. Well, let them use it from the 1st to the 3rd grade, Anduin said, jotting down notes. Joey, who had been listening, became more animated. We need a younger version, a pre-graduation version, and a normal version. All of them need good suggestions. Anduin nodded in satisfaction, recognizing Joey's potential for creative ideas. He then turned to Gemma, who was standing nearby. What about you, young lady? Do you have any thoughts on this, or is there any alchemy prop you particularly want to buy? Me, I want that! Gemma exclaimed, pointing at the raven on the counter that had been spitting light balls. She had been captivated by the magic item, her eyes fixed on it. Anduin finally took a serious look at the alchemy tool Gemma was pointing at. He noticed that while the customers in the store weren't interested in the expensive tactical equipment on the counter, many young wizards were curiously eyeing the raven. Some even dared to touch the light balls it emitted. Magic decoration? Anduin mused, then turned to Gemma. Which part of that prop interests you the most? Gemma pondered for a moment, then replied, I like the light balls it spits out. They're much more interesting than oil lamps and candles. It would be even more fun if the animal's shape could be changed to a kitten or an owl. Oh, are you interested in such a magic lamp? Anduin raised an eyebrow thoughtfully. In the wizarding world, there were quite a few magical lighting fixtures, such as the Gublai fairy fire that could burn and illuminate almost infinitely, or various magical candles and oil lamps with good brightness. However, most of these were open flame lighting methods. Anduin himself preferred the style of oil lamps or candles. Yeah, these light balls are really interesting to look at. And they're so bright, Gemma said, her eyes gleaming as she watched the small light spots flying in the air. It seemed that everyone eventually grew tired of the things they frequently encountered. Just as Anduin had once used electric lights but now preferred open flames, these wizards, accustomed to open flame lamps, found novelty in something different. This could be a new way to look at civilian alchemy props, Anduin thought, nodding silently to himself. The alchemy raven was actually a decoration he had made casually, but he hadn't expected it to be more eye-catching than other props in the store. End of this chapter. Chapter 319, New Ventures and Unexpected Customers. After seeing off Joey and Gemma, Anduin sat back at the counter, contemplating new alchemy products. Despite the influx of visitors to the store, few actually made purchases. The primary reason was the high price of the products, coupled with the customers' lack of understanding of their actual functions. Anduin wasn't overly concerned. He believed that once the aurors from the Ministry of Magic experienced the products firsthand, they would naturally promote them. As word of mouth improved, business would pick up. Additionally, Anduin planned to follow Joey's suggestions to create new products suitable for civilian use and have Rita Skeeter advertise them in the Daily Prophet. With these strategies, he was confident that business would flourish. While he was lost in thought, Azalea finally emerged from the back room, looking exhausted from testing the various props. She approached the counter and handed Anduin a piece of parchment. The goods have been counted. Here is the 20% payment approval slip. The remaining 50% will be paid once all products are delivered. Please sign if everything is in order, Azalea said, her voice tinged with fatigue. No problem, Anduin replied, inspecting the parchment. After confirming its accuracy, he signed his name and looked at Azalea with a smile. How's the quality of my products? Remember to tell your colleagues that my shop is open. They should drop by when they have time. Your efficiency is truly impressive. Producing so much uniform equipment in just 3 days is remarkable, Azalea responded with a professional smile. By the way, I also want to buy some equipment for personal use. I remember the Ministry of Magic offers internal prices. That's right. Employees of the Ministry of Magic can also purchase some products that aren't on display. Currently, I only showcase non-dangerous goods, Anduin explained. I see, Azalea nodded thoughtfully. She had wondered why the store displayed so few products, and now she understood it was due to ministry restrictions. I'd like to buy some anti-apparition jammers, shielding jammers, tactical leather boots, and a few amulets. Sorry, jammers are banned products. However, tactical leather boots and amulets are available. How many do you need? Anduin asked, giving her a curious look. It seemed her intentions were not entirely pure. Jammers are not allowed? Azalea raised an eyebrow in surprise. Didn't you say ministry staff could buy any props? Why are jammers excluded? That's a regulation from the Ministry of Magic. If you want to buy jammers, you'll need approval from the ministry, Anduin explained with a helpless shrug. All right then, I'll take 3 pairs of tactical leather boots, 10 sonic boom amulets, and 5 pairs of protective gloves, Azalea said, quickly adjusting her expression. Anduin was surprised by the large order. Tactical boots and amulets were typically sought by wizards skilled in combat, and their prices were not cheap. It seemed Azalea had substantial resources. No problem, Anduin replied, his face lighting up at the prospect of a big sale. He motioned for her to wait a moment, then went into the back room. After a short while, he returned with a tray holding the requested items. Thank you, Azalea said, handing over the payment. Azalea placed the purse back in her bag and asked casually, Mr. Wilson, you haven't graduated yet, have you? School will start soon. Will your store remain open then? Anduin replied nonchalantly, Don't worry, someone will help look after the store, and my studies aren't too demanding. I won't be at school for long periods. I see. I wish you a prosperous business, Mr. Wilson. I'll visit again when I have the chance, Azalea said with a polite smile before leaving the shop. Anduin watched her leave with a smile, but as soon as she was out of sight, his expression turned serious. He turned towards the back of the store and called softly, Chi-Chi! Chi-Chi, dressed in a uniform, apparated in front of Anduin and Dee bowed respectfully. My lord, Chi-Chi is here. Did you see the woman who just left? Anduin asked coldly. I saw her clearly through the surveillance mirror, Chi-Chi replied, standing at attention. I placed trackers in the 3 pairs of tactical leather boots I gave her. Monitor her location from after dinner until midnight every day, Anduin instructed, handing Chi-Chi 3 compass-like devices. Yes, my lord, Chi-Chi said, taking the trackers without question. She knew that Anduin's orders were paramount, and her job was to execute them. Remember the stalking techniques I taught you. Be careful not to get exposed. If you are discovered, leave immediately to ensure your safety. Understand? Anduin added, looking intently at Chi-Chi. Don't worry, my lord. I promise to complete the task, Chi-Chi replied with determination. During the tracking, record where the target goes and who she speaks to. If the 3 pairs of tactical leather boots get separated, just note who has them and where they live. The main target is still that woman, Anduin said coldly, narrowing his eyes. Yes, my lord, Chi-Chi nodded obediently. Then she hesitated and asked, But what if she doesn't keep the 3 pairs of tactical leather boots and they get scattered? Anduin nodded in satisfaction at her question. Good, you're thinking ahead. If she doesn't keep the boots, just focus on the owners of the boots. If she uses apparition to move, you might lose her. Decide who to follow based on the situation. If needed, I'll have Hog support you. His tracking skills have improved recently. Anduin's detailed instructions reassured Chi-Chi, who nodded firmly. Understood, my lord. End of this chapter. Chapter 320, Foreign Aid. The reason Anduin targeted Azalea was because, during their previous conversation, he used legilimency to sense a hint of malice from her. Although Azalea hid it well, his instinct level Legilimency still caught it. This trace of malice appeared when Anduin mentioned that the anti-apparition jammer could not be traded. Before that, Azalea had been acting quite normally, and her attitude towards him was restrained. Considering that she had been inquiring about the details of his shop intentionally or unintentionally, her intentions were obvious. Azalea was very interested in the jammer in his hand, even to the point of preparing to use violence. Given the circumstances, Anduin saw no reason to be polite. He was not usually curious about other people's secrets, but now the tables had turned. Someone wanted to uncover his secrets, so he had no qualms about being ruthless in return. After explaining to Cheeky about following Azalea, Anduin went back to managing the store. He was now quite engrossed in playing the role of the boss. One day, when he tires of this role, he might visit the store again. Spending a lot of time in the store, he gradually discovered the tendencies of his customers. Young wizards turned a blind eye to powerful alchemy props, showing more interest in the raven that could spit small balls of light. Older underage wizards were very interested in communication amulets, which could be used for convenient communication. Adolescents liked to pass small notes, but the price of communication amulets discouraged them. Higher-priced props were even less appealing. The interests of adult wizards were obviously different from those of young wizards, with clear differences in preferences between men and women. Adult male wizards were more interested in props like self-test pocket watches, which had an exquisite appearance, complex internal structure, and powerful performance. Adult female wizards, on the other hand, usually left after wandering around the shop, showing no interest in these alchemy items. They all had one thing in common: they looked but did not buy. In one afternoon, Anduin sold only a single self-test pocket watch. Faced with this situation, Anduin finally understood how the shop owner in Hogsmeade felt when customers only looked but did not buy. Although his products were relatively targeted and not completely aimed at ordinary wizards, the feeling of poor business made Anduin very uncomfortable. Moreover, not only did these people not buy anything, but they often asked him if he sold wizard chess or Quidditch items, which made him extremely embarrassed. It seems that ordinary wizards are more interested in the appearance and entertainment value of the product, and they prefer low-priced props. Many times, they are discouraged just by seeing the price list, Anduin mused. He was a novice in business, but a fast learner, and he quickly extracted the key points. After closing the shop that night, Anduin silently walked into the alchemy laboratory. He had to make some preparations. First, he aimed at Azalea. He installed a set of runes for a sensor locator in the defense core of his home, so that as long as the 3 pairs of tactical leather boots approached within a certain range, he could sense it in advance. Azalea obviously had ideas about the alchemy props in his hands, so it was possible she might come to steal them. In addition to the sensor locator, he also took out a few jammers and modified them on the spot. Anduin was going to make two-handed preparations. On one hand, he would strengthen the protection at home to guard against Azalea's secret tricks. On the other hand, he was very concerned about Azalea asking when he would. Anduin was concerned that someone might take advantage of his absence when he returned to school, especially if they tried to steal from his shop in Diagon Alley. To counter this, he decided to use his own tricks. If anyone attempted to steal while he was away, they would only end up with tampered jammers. Anduin had added back ors to all these devices, allowing him to track the thief's location and bypass any shielding spells or anti-apparition enchantments placed on them. After tampering with the jammers, Anduin stored them in a cupboard in the testing room on the first floor. To further demonstrate his vigilance, he even set up a special safe to store the equipment. With these precautions in place, Anduin could finally focus on other matters concerning his store. Following discussions with the Joey siblings and his own reflections, Anduin's company had new product ideas. The first was to classify humanoid targets into different levels and versions, creating juvenile, youth, adult, and professional versions. These changes were simple for Anduin, as they only required modifications to existing products. The second idea involved developing new products, particularly civilian items like the magic decorative lamp that Gemma had shown interest in. The cost of producing such items was relatively low, and they could be mass-produced and sold. Lastly, Anduin planned to upgrade the appearance of his existing products. Previously, he had focused on factors like durability, low failure rates, and concealment, resulting in rough shapes and basic color schemes. Sometimes he even opted for matte or black finishes. However, now that he was running a business, he needed to consider aesthetics. Despite his lack of expertise in making things visually appealing, Anduin knew someone who could help. He quickly wrote a letter and sent it out overnight with Shunfeng. The next day, an old acquaintance arrived via the Flu network, appearing in the fireplace of his house. Anduin, you're really something. During the summer vacation, you don't let people rest. Don't you know I haven't played Mahjong for almost a year? I was planning to enjoy my vacation, but now I'll be stuck with you again at Hogwarts, complained Vivian, holding a large chicken leg as she walked out. I'll pay, Anduin said, dragging a money bag in his hand and handing it directly to the plump girl. After years of knowing her, Anduin was used to her character. He knew that if Vivian was in a bad mood, she could rant for an hour even if he did nothing. So, Anduin chose to placiate her with a gold galleon. End of this chapter.